Hi, my name is Adam Kistler, and welcome to our presentation on the ethical analyzation of college endowments. Today I am joined by Amog, Macy, Peyton, Nathan, Henry, and Jeffrey, and I'll begin by talking about our agenda for today's presentation. To start, I'll talk about what is an endowment, then we'll move on to talk about endowments at public universities and private universities, then we'll talk about endowments at USC, then we'll talk about nonprofit organizations, and finally we'll close by talking about options for endowments and our opinions on endowments. Next, I'll pass it off to Amog, who's going to talk about what is an endowment.
Thank you, Adam. I will now talk about what an endowment is and the different endowment options available to donors. In general, an endowment is a donation of money or property to a non-profit organization which uses the resulting investment income for a specific purpose. Most endowments are designed to keep the principal amount intact while using the investment income for its charitable efforts. University endowments are comprised of money or other financial assets that are donated by its alumni. These are meant to support the teaching, research, and public service missions of the college. College endowments allow universities to give out scholarships, set tuition amounts, and give research grants to their students. A greater endowment allows colleges to provide more financial aid to students and subsidize the tuition amount without incurring additional costs. Some of the highest rated universities in the US have very large endowments to help support their academic progress. This chart shows the US colleges with the top 10 largest endowments. Howard University has the largest endowment in the US at $33 billion, and it is followed by Yale, which has an endowment of $23 billion. USC is ranked 17th in terms of its endowment, and it has an endowment of $6 billion. This allows it to extend financial aid and research grants to its students. Majority of the donors to colleges consist of their alumni, and colleges are able to further their public service mission through the generous contributions of these donors. Donors can restrict when the principal can be used, and they can dictate how they want their donations to be utilized. This ensures that the money is used only for worthwhile causes. There are 4 endowment options available to donors: an unrestricted endowment, a term endowment, a quasi-endowment, and a restricted endowment. The first type of endowment is a term endowment, which stipulates that only after a period of time or certain event can the principal be expended. This ensures that the college receiving the gift cannot use the assets before a certain amount of time or event. The second type of endowment is an unrestricted endowment, which gives the college maximum freedom to use the assets as they please. They can save it, invest it, or distribute it at their own discretion. The third type is a quasi-endowment, which is a donation by an individual or institution given with the purpose of having the fund serve a specific goal. The principal is typically retained while the earnings are spent as per the directions of the donor. The fourth and most restrictive type of endowment is the restricted endowment, where the principal is forever held in perpetuity, while the earnings from the invested assets are spent as per the exact specifications of the donor. Except in very few circumstances, the terms of these different types of endowments cannot be violated. This ensures that the donations are used as per the wishes of the donors and are put to their best use possible. Thank you, and I'm going to hand it off to Adam, who will talk about endowments at public colleges.
Thank you, Amog. Next, I'll be speaking about endowments at public schools in the United States. Contrary to private colleges and universities, most public universities do not have substantial endowments despite educating 77% of college students in the United States. Out of the 100 largest university endowments, public universities only account for 31 of these. In these public universities, donations and other contributions are pooled and allocated toward financial aid for students and primarily for salaries for teachers. As public universities operate as non-profit institutions, they receive money from the state in order to keep their operations running. These endowment contributions, however, go towards additional improvements that support both the teaching and research functions of the school. Each donation given is assigned to a specific purpose designated by the giver. These funds then become locked for that purpose and for that purpose only, and cannot be drawn out to put towards other duties. One example of a public school with a large endowment is UCLA. Public schools typically have a subsidiary company that deals with managing their funds. For example, in UCLA's situation, their endowment is managed by the UCLA Investment Company, which is an entity of the university. This group is responsible for investing and managing their endowment in a similar fashion to a mutual fund in order to improve the return from year to year. Now I'll be passing it off to Jeffrey, and he's going to talk about how endowments work at private universities.
So now I'm going to talk about endowments in private schools. So first of all, as mentioned in previous slides, among top 10 universities with largest endowment, there are 7 of them are private schools. As reported by 2019 study of endowments, 62% of institutions were private colleges and universities, holding around 68% of total endowment assets. However, even though private schools occupy such a large amount of total assets, endowment is still not equally allocated to each university. As of fiscal year of 2012, 53% of 4- and 2-year private nonprofit colleges and universities had endowments of less than $10 million. The median endowment at private colleges and universities is roughly only $7.9 million. Of the nation, approximately 4,000 public and private schools, only 657, or about 16%, had endowments over $50 million. And according to the report from 2019, endowment assets were sharply concentrated in 107 endowments, each valued at around $1 billion or more. They held around $494 billion, meaning that 14% of institutions held around 80% of endowment value. For private colleges and universities, endowment provides stability, flexibility, and a degree of confidence for the future. They enable institutions to aim higher and to achieve their educational and charitable purpose more effectively. As for why private universities still raise their tuitions with such large endowments, in many cases, donors explicitly direct their gifts toward expenditures that expand or enhance the institution's programs, and may even make the institutions more expensive to operate. Tuitions plays an important role in meeting other costs. At the same time, endowments help institutions to provide financial aid to students who cannot afford full tuition. And finally, for the return on endowments, college and universities' endowment returns averaged 5.3% net of fees in the fiscal year of 2019. According to an annual study released by the National Association of College and University Business Officers, the 2019 average return dipped from an average 8.2% return in 2018 and 12% in 2017, reflecting generally lower equity market returns, but it was still enough to push the 10-year average return to 8.4%. That's because in 2009, when endowment returns cratered amid the financial crisis, dropped out of the 10-year average. And thanks for listening, and now I will hand it off to Macy.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Now I'm going to make it a little bit more personal by talking about endowments here at USC. The endowments at USC are sent to USC's own endowment fund, which is a diversified portfolio of asset classes. This has long-term proactive investments, meaning that if you donate today, it might not be used today or this year, but in the long term to benefit the school as a whole. Next, there's annual payout for university use, which keeps up with inflation each year. And finally, it's ran by the USC's own investment office. There's a lot of reasons that make USC stand out for its endowments, and here are some of its competitive advantages. To start off, USC has an extensive and long-standing relationship with the investment world. They also have a strong alumni network, which we all know as a Trojan family. There's also a full-time staff of investment professionals, which keeps endowments in check. And finally, this keeps us as one of the top 5 universities for one-year returns. USC makes it super easy to donate on this website. If you just Google Give Now to USC or Endowments at USC, there's a simple button that you can click and suggest where you want your money to be spent, such as the Keck School of Medicine. You can donate any amount of money you wish, and I hope this taught you more about endowments here at USC. Now I'm going to pass it off to Nathan to talk about nonprofit schools.
Thank you, Macy, and now I'm going to talk about nonprofit schools. First off, nonprofit colleges are the traditional colleges and schools that you would think of when picturing college, such as a liberal arts school, a community college, or even state schools. These schools receive funding from a variety of sources, such as the government, tuition fees, and through monetary gifts through donations. The mission of these nonprofit schools is focused on improving the student experience rather than generating revenue for profits. Because they are not generating any of these profits, there are many reasons why there are advantages for nonprofit schools to both accept monetary gifts and also to appeal to donors, which I'll get into next. So the first among these advantages is that they're able to generate revenue, which will ultimately filter back into their mission statement. That being said, they can use a lot of this revenue to improve classroom environments and even hire high-quality staff. Nonprofit universities are also exempt from federal and corporate income taxes, and a lot of these monetary donations that they get are tax-free as well. That being said, they're able to charge much lower rates for tuition. In turn, the lower tuition rates that they are able to charge attract a much wider audience and in turn really improve diversity among the school. Thank you, and I'm now going to pass it off to Henry.
Thank you, Nathan. Though there are some undeniable values to alumni appealing to donors, there are some pitfalls as well. For starters, creating a culture of expectation when it comes to alumni. This is an environment that schools create where alumni aren't really considered alumni unless they donate to the school. Going with that, there's also an environment where the wealthier alumni are treated at a higher level than the less well-off alumni because they contribute more and they're invited to more events in alumni organizations. More concretely, there's also a double-sided conflict of interest when it comes to alumni donors, where the school often gets alumni who donate to programs that they don't necessarily need the money in, or when the school takes money that alumni want to be donated to a certain department and put it in a department where they believe they need the most. Finally, there is also an environment where the rich get richer. So for universities, the bigger ones have bigger marketing departments and they can spend more, and as they say, you have to spend money to make money, so the smaller universities suffer in this as well. Thank you. I'll now pass it off to Peyton.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Following our research, we've come up with a few options for large private universities to enhance their endowment process. Firstly, we think universities should list their objectives in the order of importance to present to donors. This will allow donors to see what areas need funding the most and will encourage them to distribute their donations throughout the institution. Furthermore, these large universities must emphasize their alumni network, as this will highlight the role colleges play in setting their students up to give back to their alma mater. The presence of a strong alumni network is important in making graduates want to give back to the students who come after them. Lastly, large schools must emphasize a distribution of funds in order to create opportunity for smaller and less funded areas to receive a portion of each donation made to the university. An example of this could be giving $1 for every 100 or even for every $10 to a place of the university's choice. This is important as areas with less popularity may not have the attention they need to get the funding they need. Now, we'll show some recommendations for public universities and smaller private universities. We believe that public and small private universities should firstly advocate for statewide guidance. In public schools, there's not enough of an emphasis on the alumni network, and moreover, the efficient endowment process that these larger universities have. Through the lack of an education and efficiency in this area, it makes sense that many public schools cannot compete in funding. With this, smaller universities must follow in larger universities' footsteps by setting up similar collection practices in order to increase the donation income. In this, we can see that both public schools and small private universities must take advice from established private schools, such as the University of Southern California, who have proven themselves to have mastered the art of endowments. In doing this, the playing fields will be leveled as small private schools and public schools will collect more donations than ever. With this, let's move on to why fundraising is necessary at all. Evidently, fundraising is necessary in the numerous aspects of university function. Firstly, fundraising is critical in allowing universities to have other streams of income other than just tuition and state funding. Secondly, giving back to younger generations at your alma mater protects your investment by contributing to the value of your degree and level of education that can be obtained at the university. Next, fundraising and donating is pivotal to giving back to all future students of the school, as it can be used to enhance facilities, professors, the athletic department, and the overall environment at the school. Next, as I mentioned before, it is critical in helping the school's ranking, as funds essentially allow for any and all improvements to occur. Lastly, by donating to the improvement of education obtained at the university, the institution will undoubtedly raise more intelligent and successful people, which drives the cycle of donations to the institution. In summary, as we covered, there are numerous types of endowments, including term endowments, unrestricted endowments, quasi-endowments, and restricted endowments, all of which are beneficial to universities. Next, we identified the advantages for nonprofit schools to appeal to donors and accept monetary gifts. We also identified the disadvantages for nonprofit schools to appeal to donors. Lastly, we covered how large public schools can redistribute donations, as well as the options for public and smaller universities, such as looking to larger institutions for advice. Evidently, fundraising is necessary in the functioning of universities and plays a huge role in not only the success of the university, but moreover the success of the students. Through investing back into the university, alumni, fans, and families are able to invest in the future generations of students, who will use these opportunities to gain a deeper and more complex education in order to better the world as we know it for generations to come. Thank you so much for watching our presentation.